That looks like Tristan.
Hi, welcome. First guest appearance for our season 5 year. We have Josiah.
Josiah!
Hello.
Fan.
It's great to be here.
What's the word I'm thinking?
Fangirling?
Of? Yes, but also
Fascinated.
no.
I don't
We're not
know.
on the same wavelength.
Not right now.
No, what is the word I'm thinking of? Top fan.
Oh.
Top fan.
Oh!
Top
Sorry,
fan
that was
Josiah.
not.
Oh, yes. Yes.
YouTube
Yay.
fan, yes.
So if you subscribe and like, you might earn a chance to be on the podcast. Just kidding.
True. That is true. Quite possible. Although I'm pretty sure most of our subscribers are actually people that we know
We
or
already know.
have been on
Yeah.
or
Well.
something.
That's fine. They just like to see us in reality, you know?
I mean, all from the back office. Bullshit. So for those of you that don't know, Josiah worked with Bree and I way back in the day.
Long
What is
time
it,
ago.
5 years now?
Yeah, it was like 5 years.
5 or
Almost
6.
5 years ago.
Yeah,
Was it
almost
5?
5 years ago.
I thought it was 5
4
or
and a
6.
half.
5 and 5. Look at that. Season 5.
Fi-
Ooh,
5 years
look at
ago.
that.
Look at there.
Perfect timing.
All the stars are
Synchronicities.
aligning.
But yeah, anyway, so we worked with Josiah 5 years ago.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. He was actually both of our bosses.
Yeah, you were. That was so weird to think
So
about.
weird.
There's so many
weird.
things. So many
things that we will dive into here
A lot.
momentarily. But yeah, so top fan.
Thanks for watching
Yeah.
us, by the way.
Thanks
No
for
problem.
watching.
Appreciate
I mean,
it.
it's
Thanks
fun.
for the support.
It
I
just
mean-
reminds me of back when we worked together.
Yeah.
So it's great.
The bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
the
great.
nonsense coming from the back office. First question he asked me yesterday. He's
Uh-huh.
like, "So can you still hear Bree
I
out
know
front?"
he was saying that.
Yeah, it's true.
That hasn't changed.
Can confirm.
I mean, my desk has changed location inside the office, but voice is still the same.
Yeah.
Still carries.
Still
Yeah.
loud bitch.
Still the bitch.
Still loud.
Yep.
So anyway, this week on our new whisper meeting, we're gonna divulge is that the right word? Divulge?
Sure.
Yeah.
Dive deep. We're gonna do a deep dive.
That too.
With side notes.
Side notes, yes. We're gonna dive deep into something very, very interesting. Wild, let's just say.
Okay, let me
Wild.
just say this. When I found out, I was like, no fucking
She
way.
was the first person I told after we had
Oh,
our
yeah.
I was like,
conversation.
no fucking
I'm like,
way.
you will not believe this.
And the fucking part is important. Just wait.
Oh.
The no fucking way swearing is important. Sorry. I probably should have made it a little bit more clear.
Phrasing.
I meant cuss words.
Cussing.
Yes.
The cussing
The
part.
vulgarity.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great...
Profanity.
Yeah. So,
So anyway, we will just deep dive right into it.
Okay.
Without no context.
no.
Without any context.
Without
No.
any context.
Okay.
All right, Josiah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your
Sure.
background story
So-
first? Maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess.
Maybe start off with what you were like as our boss.
That's what I mean.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, do
background
we
info.
want to go there? We're just
No.
gonna sit here and cringe. What I was like as the boss. I mean, I would love to think of myself as a fun person to work with. I'm not entirely sure if I gave off that vibe all the time or not, but
I mean, you can confirm.
fingers crossed.
I think no, you're a good boss. I think that you had a stature about you though, like serious business. Like, okay, we can do a little bit of goof off here, but like, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do with you guys. So let's try to keep it on track.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, so let me think. I guess while I was the boss,
It's so weird to think like that.
it is really weird. I was studying to be a pastor while I was working there, and studying to be a pastor of a particular like tiny sect of Christianity that is I would classify as a cult. So like, and I don't use the term lightly either. It's not like maybe the specific like the usual way people view as a cult, like what was the name, like drinking Kool-Aid and that sort of thing. Not like
Yeah,
not like
no,
not like the like extreme version, but
Yeah.
it's. I mean, definitionally, I would probably classify it as a cult. So yeah, I was just like neck deep in that because it's just how I grew up. I grew up in that. That's all I really knew as my reality, and so I tried to live in a way that would give me extra brownie points, I suppose, with the people that were also part of that circle. Also, kind of looking back, I feel like maybe having that sort of mindset and having that sort of belief system made me come across as like, I think I'm better than you. And I hope that I didn't necessarily do that when I was your boss. But,
No, I don't think that happened with me.
No.
I was always just interested in the questions because we'd always talk
Yeah.
about that all the time.
Yeah.
Like how your thought process in that religion is, because I'm Catholic, but not clearly dived into
Catholicism.
Thank you. Yeah, that. Clearly. So yeah, we'd always talk about that all the time because like I wanted to pick your brain about different things. So I didn't think it came off like that. To me, it didn't.
That's good, at least. I tried to not have it come across like that, but I feel like sometimes just some of those beliefs can easily tend to make you think or at least project that you think that you are better than other people.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, generally speaking, that's kind of what it was like when I was the manager. So, yeah, I mean, more detail, I guess, would be like, I mean, I could only work like, let's see, I could only work like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Couldn't work like Sundays and Wednesdays because we were going to church like every time the doors were open practically, that sort of thing. Which, I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just, it got tiring after a while. I mean, after growing up in it and doing it forever, it got tiring. But yeah, I mean, I guess generally that's kind of how it was when I was a manager. It was just like that.
It just makes me laugh because so one thing you never used to do is cuss.
Yeah.
So that's where that part comes in.
So
Yeah,
anti-cuss.
that's true.
It was
Yes.
anti-cussing. Like I'm a cusser. I got the mouth of a sailor.
We all
Yeah.
know.
He would always be like, okay, you need to calm it down
Yeah.
a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
You still need to calm
Sure.
it down.
I need to calm it down. So like there were strict things that you abided by
Yeah.
versus what you do now.
Right. Yes. That is another probably key thing there. There were a lot of things like didn't drink alcohol at all, not even socially, didn't drink at all, didn't cuss. I mean, didn't outwardly cuss. There were plenty of times where I was like cussing like crazy, like under my breath or something like that, but nobody ever heard me.
No.
No.
But
No.
because I was because again, it's like I'm supposed to kind of give off the vibe. There's supposed to be a perception that I'm better than other people because of my belief system. That's kind of like how I was raised to be, is that like I'm supposed to be different. I mean, they would say that all the time when I was growing up when people would preach. It's like, you're different, like we're supposed to be a peculiar people, so you're supposed to be different. Everyone's supposed to be like, what is wrong with you, practically?
Right.
And then you're like, and then that opens the door for you to reel them in.
Right.
That was basically how they taught us all the time. So it's like,
Crazy.
I'm supposed to act this way. I'm supposed to like be extremely like borderline like Amish or Mennonite in order for people to
That's
ask
wild.
questions. In order for people to ask questions, and then that's when you're like, so this is what it is. You want to join my church? So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was a very like, I mean, we'll probably get into this too, I suppose, but it was a very like, it is still, because I mean that sect of Christianity still exists, but it's very like homophobic, like anything anti-LGBTQ, like extremely anti-LGBTQ issues, everything like that. They're just against all of it. Anything you can think of that's like white supremacy, that's that circle.
That's insane.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's even like with the way you dress and everything too, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So like when I was going to school, I had to wear like at least like a shirt and tie every single day. I always just upgraded to a suit because I was like, I mean, why the fuck not? Because I'm already wearing a shirt and tie.
Suit.
Yeah, because I always
That
liked
was Michael's
wearing.
favorite.
I always liked wearing nice
You always
clothes
looked really
too
good,
anyway.
though. You did.
Thanks. I still like to dress up and dress nice and stuff like that. I don't really wear ties anymore. I still have a fuck ton of ties, but I just don't really wear them anymore. But I do still like to dress nice. I actually brought my burgundy suit with me. Probably gonna wear that like tomorrow or something for funsies, but
It's just so weird to hear him use these little words like this. 'Cause it's like, I don't know. It's just weird. Keep going.
but yeah, it was like we always had to, even like part of the rules for the like college that I was going to,
Yeah.
part of the rules was like they had a dress code, and of course again, I don't think I mentioned that it's like an extremely like misogynistic sect of Christianity too. Like, so it's very white supremacist. It's very like male supremacist. It's like everything like that. Anything that like
I have things about this.
everything that
Adam.
anything that you would hate because it just disturbs progress was what that circle
That's insane.
entailed and what they taught. So like the rule book in the college actually had like a huge section for like dress code, and the like girls section of the dress code was like way longer because they're like, you're basically supposed to just wear a burlap sack all the way down to your ankles and that sort of thing. Practically what it is, of course, that's just, I'm just
Right.
exaggerating a bit to be fair, but practically that's what they're teaching you. But anyway, for myself, they wanted me to wear like at least like a polo and like khaki pants, maybe jeans outside of college. If I'm just like going around town or whatever, they still wanted me to wear like a button-down shirt or like a polo or something like that. On the rarest of occasions, wear jeans, but you still should wear like khakis and stuff like that. So they always wanted me to like be dressed up like somewhat. And so that was very impractical, and I just never did that. But somehow I just never got in trouble for it. But I rarely ever did, because most of the time if I'm just out and about, I would wear like basketball clothes. But
So you never really had the freedom to express yourself in your way of clothing.
yeah, no, oh, definitely. That was a big thing. Like, I mean, I grew up in this circle. So growing up in this circle, it was like, you kind of expect to just like fit in because that's, nothing else. All
Right.
you know is just this reality that they've given you,
Right.
that they've made you think is what the world is like. Your worldview that we are sharing with you now is like the truth. There's nothing else out there. And so you kind of assume that you would just automatically fit in,
Right.
and that you won't really have issues with people like
Within the community.
within that community like disliking you for any reason other than like they just don't care for your personality or whatever.
Right.
But that's just not the case, because I've always been the kind of person where I like to wear like more flashy and colorful clothes and that sort of thing, which is, I suppose, maybe a manifestation for later discoveries. But I've always liked wearing like colorful clothes and like
Yeah.
try to push some boundaries with
Yeah.
style. And that was always something that would just like immediately shut down conversation with other people.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was like all the time. Even the church that I grew up in, there were tons of people, tons of adults that just did not like me. That it was obvious that they just
Wow.
didn't like me because I dressed, because I didn't wear like a white shirt and a tie that looked like it was made back in 1967,
Wow.
and wear like a specific like a 3-button suit with like a normal size lapel and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that sort of stuff happened like all the time. I remember as a kid there was one particular preacher that came to our church, and I again wanted to like fit in, wanted to be part of it, and wanted people to know that I was serious about it, because I was. I mean, that's
Yeah.
all I ever knew. So I wanted to like be as like serious and like all in
Be
about it as I
accepted.
could be.
Yeah.
So one time after this guest preacher preached, I walked up to him afterward. Like I was in the line to walk up to him afterward to like shake his hand and talk to him. And there was like an older lady in front of me in the line, and he was talking to her, being all nice, and had like a smile on his face and everything like that, like you normally would think of in any sort of conversation. And as soon as he was done talking to her, he looked at me, and I stepped in front of him, and his whole demeanor just changed. He went from being like kind of happy to just like extremely judgmental. And
Wow.
just like, I'm not even joking, he just like looked me up and down like that, and just like was completely shut off to like any sort of common courtesy at all.
Wow.
I shook his hand and I was like, I just want to thank you for that message. It really spoke to me, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, thanks. And then just like, and it was because I was wearing like, I assume anyways, because I was wearing like a lavender colored shirt with like a really nice like paisley tie.
Yeah.
And my hair wasn't just like slicked to the right. I think I had like at that time like a messy hairstyle, so it was like
Yeah.
kind of like spiked up a little bit. It was like kind of messy, because that was the
But it
style
wasn't
back then.
like, but it wasn't
But-
anything that, like, to us, that's nothing crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just normal.
Yeah. Yeah. But like anything outside of just like what you would picture in like a movie from like the 1950s. Anything you'd picture from like the 1950s, where the husband comes home
Yeah.
and he's wearing a suit, shirt, and tie
Yeah.
from work, and he's expecting the woman to have a meal all ready on the table
Right.
for him and stuff like that. And if he doesn't, there are going to be some issues that we probably can't say because of YouTube's community guidelines. But like anything like that, that's just
Yeah.
the vibe that gives off all the time.
Well, then I have a question.
Yes.
Because I have gone to your church.
Oh yeah,
I'm trying to think who
The one-
it was. It
the
was
one that I went to before.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
the one here. The one here.
Yeah. Did you go
I've gone.
when
I
I
think it
was there, or was it after?
I think you were there. No, it was there. You
I
were
feel like
there.
I do kind of
You
remember
were
that.
there because I think so there was I think there's one other person that used to work with us,
Yeah.
and he was trying to get people to join
Yeah.
in, to bring somebody in as a
Yeah.
guest. And so
I do remember that.
yeah, and I think it was for Easter actually.
Oh, that's right.
I think
that's
it
right.
was for Easter.
Yeah.
And so I went, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, like, the message did hit me. Like, I've been to churches, it didn't, to me, as an outsider going into this church, it didn't seem like it was, like, anything crazy, like, because we'll get into this, but anyway, it didn't feel like the stuff that you're talking about. Like, it just seemed ordinary church things like that, but, the message really spoke to me, and, like, I don't think I've ever said this to anybody, but like that message at the point in my life, like it felt like I was saved in a weird sense. Like, wow, how does this preacher know that this stuff is going on with me? This, that, and the other day. It felt great. Like I've never cried outside of church, and that was the one time I've ever cried outside of church because it was just like, whew. But it was anyway. So my question is to you: with outsiders coming into your church, how do they get perceived from other people? The same, like, oh my God?
It
Or-
depends, I suppose. It depends on what church, because you
Right.
could get, like, even in the same circle, it really depends on how much skill the pastor has at, like, in preaching. It really depends, because the pastor of that church at that time, when you went, was very good at preaching. And when I say preaching, I mean like very good at just like at being like a motivational speaker.
Yeah. That's kind of what it felt
on
like.
on big days like that.
Yeah.
He's very good at being a motivational speaker with like a twist of Christianity and giving like the gospel.
Yeah.
And so as to try to like bring people, like lost souls in, to bring people in and try to convert them, that sort of thing. So he was really good at that. Some other people are just not good at that, and they're really boring to sit there and listen to.
Oh,
But he was actually
there's so many. Yeah.
But he was actually really good at it. I think that church for a long time was really good at like bringing a bunch of people from the community in and getting them to stay because he's so good at that. But he's really good, like on a day like Easter, you wouldn't notice it.
Right.
But like other days when he's preaching, you would notice that he is, like from an outside perspective, I suppose if you're kind of expecting it to be manipulative, then you would probably see it. But like it's
manipulative.
extremely like manipulative, and it's I can't even think of a specific example right now, but it's like, yeah, it's weird. It's like very manipulative and not very many like, they're not really giving you any like facts, any sort of like any like here's some evidence for my position, which I mean, I guess you wouldn't really expect from a preacher.
Right.
They're kind of meant to be more of a motivational speaker.
Right.
But with him, he was always very manipulative with his preaching, to try to make you feel like you are maybe what's going on wrong in your life is your fault. But that was
Right.
everybody in that circle, every
Right.
preacher in that circle. It's
Right.
just like anything going wrong in your life is somehow your fault. It has
Right.
nothing to do with anything else. It's just you're not doing something right.
Right.
But he was very, very good at manipulating people and just using people and taking advantage of people.
And that
blah,
would be
blah, blah.
within the inner circle as well, you would say. Then.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
So,
That's
but they came
crazy.
crashing down just as quickly as they rose. They came crashing back down. It's kind of insane, because there's actually a documentary on Max about.
I want to talk about this.
Yeah,
too.
about the circle that, about the circle that I grew up in. I don't know if I'll say like
No, you don't have to.
any more detail necessarily, but it's about that exact circle that I grew up in.
Have you watched it?
Mm-hmm.
I watched it too,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know a lot of different things. in
Let's
that
just
show.
say the opening part of it is literally right outside of our house. It's
Yeah.
just wild to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
that's
drove by
wild.
it.
Yeah,
That too.
Yeah,
It's just wild to me.
it's insane to think that
It's so close.
what these people think and believe, and it's just a man rules this whole circle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's women here too, you know.
yeah,
Like, you can go fuck yourself.
yeah, exactly.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's insane.
That's all I can
That
say.
was, I never really understood it, to be honest, because like on one hand I've always kind of felt like maybe a bit of a natural born leader, I suppose.
Yeah.
I feel like I can comfortably step into a role and like if I'm like comfortable in the position,
Right.
step into a role and help the people around me to like reach a common goal. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm naturally like kind of good at that, but I didn't necessarily feel like I just had this natural aura and gift and presence because I'm a man that like only I am allowed to lead.
Right.
That even from like when I was a kid, I just didn't really understand that aspect of it. That like, why does because like it's always taught that the husband is the head of the house and then the wife is like basically secondary. And then a lot of them will argue and say, well, no, they just have different roles. They just work together to complement each other. But that's not entirely true because it's like, yeah, they have different roles, but one's the fucking CEO of the company. To think of an analogy, it's like one's the fucking CEO of the company and the other one's standing at the front desk doing all the fucking work.
So my question is to you, how accurate do you think that documentary was to you?
Oh, it was
Like, spot
very
on?
accurate. Yeah, I wish it would have talked a little bit more. I wish if they would have gone on for like seasons and seasons and seasons.
Right.
I wish they would have talked about how it's like that particular situation of like abuse is
Yes.
so rampant in every
Sector.
in
or
every
whatever.
like in every church that I've known in that circle at least. And I know it's like rampant in like various sects and various denominations of Christianity too.
Well, so the thing that caught me off guard with a lot of that was the fact that it's the woman's fault if
Yeah.
they get abused
Yeah.
or whatever.
They do that to you-
absolutely the fuck not.
Yeah, exactly. They do that to, I mean, I guess it's not really surprising that they would do that because number one, it's an extremely misogynistic circle.
Right.
But number two, they do that to people no matter what. Like,
Right.
even as a man, if I
Right.
say that, like, something happened to me or, like, this is going wrong with me, like, man, I'm going through a financial struggle, the first thing they do is, like, are you tithing? Are you giving your 10% to the
Right.
church?
Right.
Because if you're not doing that, God's not going to bless you.
Get
I'm
the
like-
fuck out of here.
So-
I'm sorry.
and then I'm like,
don't have
yeah,
to
I've
donate to
not
a church to be blessed.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I have not stopped giving to the church. And they're like, okay, are you like giving to missions and that
Right.
sort of thing? Like, are you giving to like the people that are supposed to go around the world
Right.
and teach people the same things that we learn every single Sunday? That, and actually, in a lot of cases,
This is so mind-boggling.
don't actually do that. They actually just basically like will just build their own community of abuse too.
Right. I've seen that, like the camps or whatever the hell
Yeah.
they want to call it. I was just dumb
Yeah.
flow. I was floored.
Yeah, so that was the first thing they would always do. Anytime you had any sort of thing going wrong in your life, they're like, okay, well, let's see what you're doing that's causing
What are
that.
you contributing to
Yeah.
us?
Why are you not, what are you doing that's causing that problem? Instead of it being like, oh, that sucks. Like, there is really something going on in your life. And that's really unfortunate. It's like, there's got to be something that you're doing because there's no way that God would be allowing that to happen, which is just a very, like, dismissive
That's crazy.
way of like helping people.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I guess maybe and then I don't know if we want to kind of like go into like how I've changed or like maybe the journey into
Yeah,
like
what led you?
What was your aha moment?
Yeah,
my
what was
aha-
your
that wasn't
aha
really an
moment?
aha moment to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. There wasn't really an aha moment to be honest. It was like
Okay.
a lot of little things. It helped that when we moved down there, we didn't go to church much at all when we
Yeah.
first went down there, because Liam, my son, was like very sick.
Yeah. I remember he was
still-
going through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so like he had like fluid on his lungs after his heart surgery.
Oh, jeez.
And so we were like, okay, well, he's probably going to. Oh, my therapist is calling me because she forgot that I wanted to have an appointment tomorrow, not today. But he was still like really sick, or he didn't seem sick, but they still said that he had fluid on his lungs, and so we were expecting that he would be a lot more prone to sickness and that it could affect him worse, and we didn't want him to
Right.
get sick.
Right.
So, so we just didn't really go very often. Like, and then for a little bit, I was going like every once in a while, but then I was like, I don't want to bring something back to him, so we just
Right.
didn't go. That helped because that allowed us to kind of get outside of the echo chamber, and then COVID happened, and so then it was just like, yeah, there's no way in hell I'm going to church now. Like, there's no, a little bit of irony after that.
Yeah.
But like, there's no fucking way I'm going to church now. And so it was just like little bits here and there of like,
Disassociating yourself from the circle.
yeah,
you
of like
know?
not being in the echo chamber and realizing that like there were a lot of things that were done wrong because of how we left the church from here. Like the reason that one of the reasons we left was because like the college got shut down because of all of the
about that.
because of all the abuse that was
Yeah.
coming up again and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was like that started to like open some eyes, I suppose. And my wife was very influential in that too, because she went through like a lot, like all those situations in that documentary is like almost to the T what she went through as a teenager.
That's just not okay.
Yeah. So with like her own church somewhere
Right.
else,
Right.
that's never mentioned in that documentary either. So like it just happens like almost everywhere that I've seen. But anyway, so she went through very, very similar, like practically the exact same thing that's in that documentary, and that was the reason that the college shut down, because they didn't have money and all this stuff was coming up again, and everyone was demanding accountability and that sort of thing.
Well, didn't they end up saying something about how people have brought it to someone's attention and they just threw it underneath the rug?
Yeah. Yeah, they did that
So when you speak
every
about
time.
it, yeah. So when
they
you
would
speak
just
about
sweep
it,
it
you
under the
just-
rug and everything
yeah.
like that. Yeah. They wouldn't call the authorities, anything like that. They would just like try to deal with it internally.
Right.
To again give the perception that this particular community, this like institution
Right.
is just better than everyone else
Right.
because we're clean.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're actually just like so full of dead bones. It's not even funny. And
I'm so like. Yeah.
so during COVID, like we were like questioning a lot of things, and Gabrielle was like, we were questioning like, well, like the same exact thing has happened at that church that happened to her when she was a kid, and so she was like, okay, well, it seems like if this just constantly happens, it seems like there must be something like that's making this happen on a consistent basis. And for me, I was still for a while unwilling to admit that it was like something like deeply entrenched into the ideology of that circle. I was just like, okay, well, I know that I've seen like some churches that have issues like this, but I know some people that are good people, like that I genuinely think are good people.
Right.
And so I was like, I don't know if I'm willing to necessarily say like demonize those people. What I would say back then was like, I'm not sure if I'm willing to like demonize those people because of a few bad apples.
Yeah.
But then like she just kept like bringing it up and kept like showing that like this is a consistent pattern. This happens all the time. And then that started to like kind of break down my like mental guard, I suppose. And then I started realizing that like just how true that was, I suppose. That like it was just a consistent pattern that happened all the time because of how misogynistic the community is and how women are just treated lesser than men. So it just is a breeding ground for abuse. And so then I think that's when I finally like decided that I wasn't going to be a part of that circle anymore. I was like, all right, well, I'm done with that circle. And I still held on to like the idea of like not drinking alcohol for like a little bit longer. I started like cussing pretty soon after, just because I was like these people are taking the passage in the Bible out of context when they're saying that like you're not supposed to cuss. I was like, also it's widely cultural. It's like widely culturally based, like on whether you think that this is like, whether you think cussing is like bad or not. I was like,
Right.
so, and the Bible is not clear on that at all.
Right.
So I was like, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I was like, in the culture that I grew up in, at least like where I grew up anyway, like location anyway, was very like cussing was just a thing. Like everybody did it all the time. Everybody cussed like sailors. And so like that's how I was in my head all the time. It just never came out because I had to maintain that persona. So,
Fuck you, Josiah. Just kidding.
Especially at where we work, it's
yeah,
Yeah.
swears.
yeah. So, but then like very soon after I still considered myself a Christian, and I still considered myself a Christian, but very soon after I was like, you know what, we were gonna go like hang out with my parents and my sister and brother-in-law. And they were both, my sister and brother-in-law were also both very influential in like opening my eyes to all of the problems with that circle too. But we were going to go hang out with my parents and my sister and brother-in-law. And my sister and brother-in-law were socially drinking. They were still, like, they still considered themselves Christians. My parents are still, I think they still consider themselves Christians, even to this day.
I was going to ask if
Just
they
not
were...
quite, like, not nearly to the level that they were before.
Right.
But not that particular circle, anyway, that particular culty community. But but my mom said that that my parents and my sister and brother-in-law both drink, and they were like, we just want to make sure that like you guys are okay with it. And I was like, I don't care, like do whatever you want, like I won't do it,
Yeah.
but do whatever you want, because at the time I still thought that it was wrong. And then I like researched it a little bit before we left, like researched it actually like a decent amount, because it was like an hour drive, and it was looking through the Bible, and I was like, actually, it doesn't really say anything. I was like, there are multiple passages that they would point to me when I was a kid to say that, like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
You shouldn't drink at all. And all of those, it was only talking about, like, being drunk. Like, and the context of being drunk was, like, relying on alcohol to be your, like, source of happiness.
Right. Like
Because
alcoholism.
because the counterpoint is supposed to be that like God is supposed to be your source of joy. That was kind of the whole context of all of those passages. So I was
Right.
like, well, that is wrong what they've told me. So then we went and I had my first drink that night. And that was fun. And I've still not been able to get drunk. That's really weird, but
Tragic.
yeah, it's so dumb. But it's
So
like
dumb.
I have like the most overactive liver known to man.
I can change
Annoying.
that. I can change that.
Yeah. But so, and then it was just like a little trickle effect. Even still, after I'd left that particular community, I was still like very conservative, like extremely conservative, like politically.
Yeah.
Still held on to like the ironically still held on to like the anti-LGBTQ sentiments and that sort of thing for a while. And my sister and brother-in-law were very influential in kind of like in kind of like getting me to see reality through that too. And so eventually it was just like after having multiple conversations, just like casual conversations with them where we just talk about our perspectives, and they would share their perspective on these like social issues, and I would share mine. I just started to realize, I suppose, that like I didn't really like my arguments. I didn't think they were very strong.
Yeah.
And it was like pretty, I feel like it was pretty soon after, it was maybe like 6 or 9 months or so. Maybe it was like, maybe it was closer to a year. Anyway, after like doing the whole alcohol thing. After
Still so weird.
after that was when I kind of like stopped being so conservative and realized that like all the anti-LGBTQ stuff that I was taught was just a load of horse shit. Even in the context of the Bible, like is just a load of garbage.
Right.
And it's just people taking things out of context or putting their own ideas into the Bible. And so started to think that, and then very soon after that, interestingly enough, was when I was because I started questioning everything. I was researching a ton because after a while it was like
you're questioning your whole mindset now at this
it was
point.
like this whole time over the course of like 2 years, I would say 2.5 maybe, over the course of that whole time frame, it was just like this constant thing of like questioning like what is actually true, because I'm discovering that so many of the things that they've told me is just blatantly false.
Right.
Even if I'm looking in the context of their Bible, it's just blatantly false.
Right.
And so I kind of threw away the whole anti-LGBTQ sentiment and started to actually be an ally, and started to realize like that's just reality, that people are born this way, that they don't choose, they're not doing this to get back at God or something, like I
Right.
was taught when I was a kid. So I started to like kind of throw those things away, and then after a little bit, I can't remember exactly when it happened, but it was in context with like everything else. I can't remember exactly like how long it was. I think it was like maybe 6 or 9 months after this really started to take full effect. It was like Gabrielle came out to me as bi, and that I think that was actually when I really was just like, all right, cool. Well, then this anti-LGBT shit is just that. It's just shit.
Right.
And that's when I really just like threw it away. I was like, yeah, it's absolute garbage.
Right.
And so then, and then very soon after that, interestingly enough, is when I started to question like just the very basis of everything that my belief system was built on from like when I grew up, like just Christianity in general. And I started to question that stuff a lot. And I had tons of conversations with her, and like that I was scared about questioning all this stuff, because I mean, this is all I've ever known.
Right.
Like down to even, I was saying that I don't want to get sidetracked when I talk about the scientific part of this, so I will try
I
not
know.
to. But
Side note.
but one of the things that I was really like, that really started like having me question personally the existence of God was just the way I was taught about how the world began. Because the way I was taught was that like the world was created in 6 literal days by God. And then the more I learned, I was like, that doesn't make any scientific sense whatsoever. That's not possible. And they're like, well, so like one thing in specific, so I don't trail off on this long conversation, is that like they'll say that like, because we can easily see that the Earth is like 4.3 to 4.5 billion years old because of like radiometric dating and these things. And so like young Earth creationists, people that believe that the world was created in 6 literal days by God, they will say that like, well, the reason there's so much decay and the reason it appears to be 4.5 to 4 or 4.3 to 4.5 billion years old is because of the rapidly accelerated decay that happened during the worldwide flood that happened over the course of a year. And so on the surface, that sounds like that could be a decent argument, but when you actually like look at the logistics behind that, it makes absolutely no sense, and like the physics behind it, because in order for the Earth, in the span of a year, in order for the Earth to decay that much to where instead of it appearing to be 6,000 years old, it appears to be 4.3 to 4.5 billion years old, the Earth's surface would have had to have heated up so much to where it would have been like dropping a I can't remember the exact number. I think it was like 7,000, like over 7,000 hydrogen bombs per square kilometer on the entire face of the Earth. That's what the Earth's, like the temperature of the Earth's surface had to be. And I was like, I'm pretty sure a wooden ark wouldn't have survived that.
No.
So I was like, so that seems wildly unrealistic.
Right.
So I was like, okay, but then there, of course, is still, and I think there still are some good arguments for like intelligent design. I was like, but clearly the evolutionary process is the truth. Like that's just the scientific truth. So I started to like look into like evolution a little bit more and look into like that sort of thing. But that was what really started to get me to question like the existence of God, I suppose. And then I had multiple conversations with her, with Gabrielle, about like, and telling her that I was scared because I was really starting to feel like there wasn't a God, or at the very, very least, the God of like the Christian Bible that I have, that I know because I've read it multiple times,
Right.
that he's not real, is like, at least from my perspective anyway. I would tell her like a few times that like I was terrified that that might be the case, because either like that means that I don't know shit, or that like I'm saying this stuff, and if I admit that I'm questioning this, that I could go to hell.
Oh, so you're gonna damnation.
Yeah. And she was like, well, I think you thinking that is already enough that if that's the case, that you would go to hell. And I was like,
Right.
that's true.
That's
that
true.
makes me even more terrified. But now I'm like extremely like hyped and incentivized to figure out what the fuck I actually believe. So then I started just like researching like so much. And to now where it's really interesting. I went from studying to be a pastor to now like it only took like 4 years, I think. 4 years later, identifying as an atheist. So it's like really weird.
I was gonna ask if you still believed in God or not, like just
Oh,
without
yeah.
all the bullshit.
No, not anymore. It's like I am fully aware that there are plenty of people that are able to believe in like the Christian God, even, but leave out all that horse shit
Right.
because they're perfectly like capable of realizing that like a lot of the things in the Bible were just written by men, but they still believe that like but they still believe that like the God that it talks about or that it tries to reference anyway exists. So I'm fully aware that like that's a thing, and I think there are some good arguments for that. I just don't. I'm just not entirely convinced
Yeah.
by them anymore.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's really interesting. And then
That's very interesting.
and then
to
going
me.
from having those
Wild.
yeah, and then going from having those extremely like anti-LGBTQ sentiments to now discovering like how long ago was it? It was like a year and a half ago or so, maybe, discovering that I'm pansexual. So it's like going from
one extreme.
going from an anti-LGBTQ
Yeah.
student of like attempting to like studying to be a pastor to a pansexual atheist.
That's just crazy to me.
Isn't
Yeah.
it
It's a
wild?
little crazy.
It's wild.
That's like the really short story of it too.
That's insane.
It was and I did want to put this in here too though, because there would be plenty of people if they ever saw this video. There would be plenty of people that like I grew up in, or that I grew up with, or that like grew up in a similar circle or the same circle that I grew up in, that would say, well, you just decided to leave because you just wanted to do whatever you wanted. You just want to live life however you want and live in sin and blah, blah, blah. That could not be farther from the truth, because it was a crisis to try to figure out all this stuff. It was,
Oh, I bet.
it was very daunting, and it was terrifying to kind of navigate all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it was not fun. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. It's just like, based on the evidence that I was given, I was like, I don't feel like I can think anything else. Like I can't
Yeah.
believe any other way.
Not to
Then-
be ironic, but it's
yeah.
like you're reborn.
Yeah, right.
Not to be ironic,
Yeah.
but seriously, like you're a whole new different, still the same person, but like complete shift in like everything you've ever known.
Yeah, and it's
And believe.
weird. It's really funny because now it's like I feel like I can relax a lot more now.
Yeah.
Because I can actually be myself.
Yeah.
Because there were so many times, it's funny because one of what should have been my like my queer awakening was like how much I was obsessed with Hayden Christensen as a kid, and his role,
Yeah.
He was hot.
his role as Anakin Skywalker.
Oh,
Fight me
That should
up.
have been
Shit,
my
forgot that was
awakening.
there.
Yeah, that should have been my awakening, but unfortunately it wasn't. It didn't come like decades later. But yeah,
what the fuck?
crazy.
That is crazy. I hated Christensen every
Of
time.
all
Of all, yeah, I was gonna
Of
say,
all men.
you picked a good one. It's fine.
totally fine, especially since did you ever watch, speaking of him, did you ever watch what was it? Kenobi?
Yes.
Okay.
watch that?
So even now, like he gets better with age.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
He's gorgeous.
He is good looking.
Still gorgeous. And
He is.
dude, every time, because adults, when I was a kid, adults gave him so much shit for how he played the role of Anakin.
I remember that. Yeah.
They gave him
Prequels,
so
though.
much shit, and I just didn't understand because I fucking loved those movies, and I loved him as Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
I felt like he did such a good job.
I thought he did,
And
too.
so like they all were like they even talked about like in plenty of interviews, like he and Ewan McGregor talked about in so many interviews, like how it was like unfortunate, and they were like, we made this for kids, but the adults are the ones that are like
Yeah.
saying that they hate this. They
Yeah.
were like, and they kind of expressed some of their like disappointment in how it was received by
Right.
the people at that time. And until now, all those kids that were like kids back then and didn't
Yeah.
have a voice, now like Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor will go to
Yeah.
like Star Wars conventions and they'll have like the like greatest like standing ovation for them. And like to this day, like now whenever I see YouTube videos about it or like
Yeah.
TikToks or whatever about it,
Right.
Hayden Christensen, and he's like, there's one where he's like tearing up because everyone's
Aw.
just like giving him such a, like a great
Right.
reception
Wow.
that he's like tearing up, and he's like, man, you guys are making me emotional. It makes me cry every time because I'm like, yes, you fucking deserve it.
I mean, him and Anakin though, like
Oh, he was hot.
for
Sorry.
a queer awakening, yes, please,
Yeah,
yes,
Yeah.
Couldn't have came out any better though.
yeah.
honestly.
Orlando Bloom as Legolas
Shut
as
the
well.
fuck
Or Will Turner
up.
from Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh my god.
I can
Yes.
confirm that.
I agree.
Can
Also,
confirm.
so Gabrielle's like, she's like, it's funny, I always joke around and say that she's like 97% lesbian. And so like, she doesn't have the the perspective that is fair to share on like a topic like this, like when we're talking about hot men, because she's like 97% lesbian. And so like, I love John Bernthal. I think John Bernthal is super hot. He's the one that played Shane in The Walking Dead or The Punisher.
Oh, okay. I know who
Or
you're
he
talking
played
about.
The Punisher. I love him. I think he's fucking gorgeous. But she's like,
not bad.
he's ugly. Like
he's
he's
not
so
bad.
ugly. And I'm like, you,
I would have to
not bad.
agree.
and I'm like, you better shut up.
He's
Right now. Seriously.
He's
I
not
agree with
bad.
you. I agree
He's
with
not
you.
bad, but he's not. That might be 3 against 1.
You're so loud.
Sorry. I can just take it off.
Just take it off.
I had it over here that would still pick your
Well,
fucking
I'm
voice.
I
sorry.
still have it over there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Down there in the blanket. I'm clipping it right
But-
here.
he's one of my favorites though, for sure.
That is insane. This is so crazy
It's
to me.
so funny.
It's just interesting, like, knowing who you were before and, like, now it's just, like, you're not even the same person.
That's my whole thing too. It's like
It's, like, hard to wrap my head around,
Yeah.
in a way. But not really, because it's, like, in my point of view, it's, like, finally you're not encapsulated
Yeah.
with all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that it was shit, because I respected everybody, but like you're not encapsulated with all this bullshit, and you finally can see. I'm making all these jokes. The light. Sorry.
There are lots of puns going
Yeah.
on today.
no. When we were talking
But
about
for
this,
real, yeah.
it was like totally weird, wild.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, behind the scenes, I think we somewhat knew.
You knew more than me, though. You had the DARS.
It's the homo. The homo telepathy. No, just for one, Lord of the Rings. 2, Star Wars. Because we would always, Star Wars, Harry Potter, we would always talk about, I would remember, Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or anything
Yeah.
like that. And that was completely out of the box from what you were practicing at the point.
Yeah.
So I would have
Yeah.
and I mean now that you're in the community, it's a whole nother level for me. It's like holy fuck, I just can't even comprehend it.
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
the bandwidth for that.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But like,
But good for you though.
yeah,
Good for you
exactly.
for realizing
Both of you guys.
life.
Yeah, honestly.
It's
Both
been-
of you, honestly.
Yeah.
It
Both
was
of you.
it's like on one hand it's been fun because it has been fun like kind of learning a ton of new stuff, and it's the biggest thing that's been like the most fun is that now I can, like I was saying before, I can relax because I can actually be myself
Yeah.
and feel like I don't have to put on a show and pretend that I'm something that I'm
Right.
that I'm not.
Right.
So it's been like on one hand, it's been like pretty like it's been an existential crisis in many ways, but also at the same time, it's been like a lot of fun too, like kind of like understanding new perspectives and adapting new ideologies and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That part of it has been a lot of fun.
That's insane.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There was another question. And it was about that documentary. But I think you kind of already answered it because it was almost one of those questions of like, now being an outsider looking into that documentary and like going back into that community, like, what would be like one thing you would say to people? Like, just never go, never do it.
yeah, it's difficult for me to give like an unbiased
Yeah.
advice to people because of what I've had to endure, what she's had to
Yeah.
endure, and my understanding of that circle.
Yeah.
So it's kind of difficult to give any sort of unbiased advice to people, but my recommendation would be like, I don't know. To me personally, my recommendation to people would just be like, in most cases, unless you know that there's a church over here that you know that you can have a great time at and you can really like just feel like you're at home and that there's family there and that sort of thing. Unless you know that for a fact, there's not really a whole lot of a reason to go to church.
Yeah.
Because everything that you would do at church, you can do yourself at home
Right.
too anyway.
And that's what I've always said too.
And it's difficult for people to like, I'm sure it's difficult for people to hear that advice from somebody who identifies as an atheist now.
Right.
But like, as somebody who was an extremely devout Christian
Yeah.
that did really believe this stuff, that's another thing that people will say is that like, I didn't actually believe it, I was just a faker. That really did believe this. Someone who really was all in for this stuff. Everything that that happens at church, everything that's taught at church, is the same thing that you could teach yourself just by staying home and like basically just like meditating. Like if you read the Bible, and just like kind of meditate on some stuff like that, like you would just have the same sort of experiences that you would have at church. It's just the downside is that like you lose out on some of the community.
Yeah.
And that's what does suck about like not being part of that anymore is that like I don't really have that like community anymore.
Right.
But I mean, argument is had that I never really had it in the first place because most people just didn't give two shits about me anyway because I was always different.
That's insane.
So,
Good for you for being
yeah.
different. Though.
Honestly.
yeah.
But that's all like. I mean, I still feel in debates. Like, do I believe in God or do I not? I mean, I feel like there's something out there. But like, I've talked to Kaylee about this too, since Kaylee's not here. We've talked about like how God could be many things for different people, and you know, I get torn, and I think there was a point that was like, I don't know if I'll ever go to heaven or if there even is one. You know, like all I know is I can be a good person, and that's all I can do.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I have always said too, though, like I don't have to go to church and be in this fucking group in order to say, hey, thanks for all the appreciation for God above and Jesus and all that. Like I don't need to go to church to do all that.
Yeah.
I can do that at my own house.
Yeah. Also, it's like, yeah, God can be so many different things for different people because I mean, as far as like from a philosophical standpoint, it's like I guess it really depends on like how you define God.
Right.
Because like I suppose if you wanted to for me define God as like science, then you could call me a Christian or a God believer because now I consider myself an atheist and I try to base like my beliefs of like the world just around what can be what kind of empirical evidence we have from science. So I mean if you want to label that as science as my God, then there you go. I guess I'm a God believer.
Right.
So
I
just don't believe in a higher power, I suppose.
Right. It's wild.
Wild.
I don't know. Like I don't even know if I have any questions because like he answered a lot.
Cool.
I already knew everything beforehand, so
Like I'm trying to think of some really good questions, but now I just don't. You kind of already like said it all. Shoot.
Well, he will be back next week.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah, we are pretty much out of time.
yeah,
Oh.
so on that note, he will be back next week. So if you have any questions for him then,
Yeah.
he will be here again.
Thanks, Josiah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
It's
you
been
for coming and
Yeah, telling us
doing your
story.
religious queer journey.
Absolutely. It's been fun.
Okay, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Peace. I'm not even on camera, but peace.
He already knows the ending. Bye.
Also, it's kind of homo.